All right, let's discuss this and more with former New York State Senator and Democratic strategist David Carlucci and former HHS senior official under President Trump and George W. Bush, Jack Calavetrinos. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I want to listen at first what Speaker Pelosi had to say about all of this. Here's the Speaker.
I think that it's important for us to show support for Taiwan. I also think that none of us has ever said we're for independence when it comes to Taiwan. That's up to Taiwan to decide.
Okay, so the background on all of this, the United States, through the One China policy, it recognizes one government there. It's China's government, but we can have informal relations with Taiwan. And the more that the U.S. has those relations with Taiwan, the more Beijing hates it. So that's the quick background there. David, I want to start with you. Is this trip a bad idea?
Well, look, you heard the president say he was very careful, and they're walking this line to protect a policy that's been in place of strategic ambiguity towards Taiwan. And as Nancy Pelosi had said, she supports Taiwan, but independence of Taiwan is solely up to Taiwan. So this is a fine line to walk, and I think we have to let our intelligence tell us whether it's a safe trip to take, one that would be worth the risk. But it's a very fine line and one that we have to be very careful with.
Jack, what do you think about that? It is a fine line between China and Taiwan and the approach towards both the entities. Do you think that the Speaker should be going, and is there anything else that the administration should be doing if not?
Thank you. I mean, I do think she should be going. I think it's very confusing. It's not really strategic. It seems more like it's just more administration, foreign policy confusion. If he had real concerns and the military had concerns, he should say what those are and should privately talk to the Speaker of the House, who's number 2 in succession for president, and he should tell her not to go. Otherwise, back her up, support her going. The highest-ranking official that went since 1979 was my former boss, Secretary Alex Azar, when he went in 2020. President Trump supported him going, and I think that this president ought to be supporting her going as well.
David, you look at what this administration has done when it comes to China. It's maintained a lot of the tariffs that the previous administration had put on. The Trump administration really sort of leaned into, towards the end of the administration, the China hawks who had been pushing to get more aggressive with China. Do you think that this administration was right to maintain at least some of that, or does there need to be a bettering of relations between the United States and China?
Well, there definitely needs to be a better relationship, specifically after 4 years of Donald Trump. We've seen the relationship between the United States and China just deteriorate. And especially now with a war raging in the Ukraine, we have to be very careful, and we have to do what we can to strengthen our relationship and make sure that we become strategic partners as opposed to strategic enemies. And I think President Biden is doing the right thing to try to support Taiwan and develop a stronger relationship with China at the same time.
Jack, let's turn to this Steve Bannon case. He's been convicted on a couple of counts here. His attorney says that he's going to appeal. How high do you think this goes?
I mean, I think it sounds like, based on some of the reporting that you all have been doing, that it goes all the way to the top, because there is an issue of him having worked in 2017 but wasn't on the payroll in 2020. But I think the larger issue here is that, Republicans are likely going to take over the House in November, and I'm just surprised that they've pushed this to this point. And it sort of shows what conservatives are very upset about, which is this two-tier justice system. I mean, why is it that Eric Holder never was prosecuted like this? Why is it that the Colbert TV crew was arrested and then they were let off by the district attorney in D.C.? So I think it really shows sort of this double standard that exists about which side gets prosecuted on certain issues.
David, what about that?
Well, I think the conviction of Bannon is a major blow to any Republican running in a general election this year, because what it demonstrates is there's one set of rules for Trump and his team, and then another set of rules for the rest of us. And when you have a process here where Bannon is stepping in the way of trying to get to the bottom of what happened on January 6th, where it looks like an interference in a long-standing tradition and precedent of a peaceful transfer of power, we're no better than a third world country that only knows corruption. So I think this is something where the silent majority in America, doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, it's infuriating. And I think the electorate will not tolerate it. And Republicans just standing by with this rhetoric and allowing this to continue is going to be a real problem for any Republican this year.
All right, gentlemen, we got to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.